Hi there, everyone. Member of Parliament Garna Geddes here, broadcasting, doing this video from my parliamentary office. This is the first of a new feature that we're going to be running through my Facebook page and YouTube channel over the next 6 weeks, which is news from Ukraine's Frontline. It's been about 3 months since the further invasion of Ukraine by Russian forces at the direction of Vladimir Putin. And many people continue to be here in Canada feel deeply concerned and connected to what's going on. They want to see government here in Canada do more to support the people of Ukraine in this struggle. What I wanted to do with this segment for the next 6 weeks or so is connect you, those who follow me on social media, with people that are really engaged with what is happening right now in Ukraine, to give people here in Canada that greater sense just of connection with and awareness about what are the mechanics of the ongoing struggle, and also coming out of that, what can we do to be effective in supporting the people of Ukraine. And part of the fact that I'm able to do this is that I'm very pleased that Liuba Sharapova, who's joining me today for this discussion, is joining my parliamentary office as a Ukrainian parliamentary intern through the Canada Ukraine Parliamentary Program. So Liuba and I are going to be doing this segment together. Today we're going to be chatting, but in subsequent weeks we're going to be bringing on other guests, people broadcasting directly from Ukraine who can give us those close, up to the minute points. So if you don't follow my page already, please do so, and we'll be going live around this time, around kind of 1:30 Eastern time, 11:30 if you're in Alberta, every week for the period that Liuba is in my office, and using this opportunity to bring you these just important updates, again, from the front line of Ukraine's struggle for freedom and democracy and self-determination. So Liuba, thank you so much for joining and for your help with this. And I wonder if you could maybe just start by introducing yourself and sharing a bit about the Canada Ukraine Parliamentary Program that has brought you into my office.
Yeah, thank you. It's an honor for me to be here and interning in your office. The Canada Ukraine Parliamentary Program has been running for more than 30 years. So it was an initiative to bring Ukrainian students to see how democracy is working in Canada, and actually many of the Canada Ukraine Parliamentary Program alumnus has become members of Parliament, of Ukrainian Parliament, members of Ukrainian government. So it's a very great initiative to actually see how Canadian democracy works. And I also have been choosing to do my internship here, and it's wonderful. It's only a week I'm here, but I've actually gotten to see very different aspects of Canadian government and parliamentary work, and yours work too. It's very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. And I know that for how long this program has been running, I've spoken with many members of Parliament who this program has played a critical role in their connection with what's happening in Ukraine. They're speaking to former interns who are back in Ukraine. And just to emphasize, this isn't a program for the Ukrainian-Canadian community. We have a strong, active Ukrainian-Canadian community. These are interns that are coming from Ukraine, learning about the democratic process as we practice here in Canada. Not perfectly, but just seeing it in action. And then, and you mentioned 30 years. I didn't know that. That means that essentially right after independence is when this started, right after the modern independence of Ukraine. So that's really an incredible legacy.
Yeah, and it's one of the goals of the program is for Ukrainian students to come here and actually come back to Ukraine and implement what they saw, or just even to broaden the view on how democracy actually has to work. So it's a great program, and I'm very thankful to be a part of it.
Awesome. Well, and thanks for facilitating these videos. I think this is a great opportunity. I know for me, when it starts out, you're kind of able to follow the minute by minute news, and then it kind of gets a bit harder to follow, especially if you don't know the geography as well. I think we'll maybe talk a bit about the regions, but just to understand kind of how the up to the minute struggle and how it's playing out. But before we get to that, I wonder if you could just share a bit more about your own story, kind of where you grew up, where you've lived, and what you hope to, what you hope to do, kind of coming out of this program.
Yeah, so I'm originally from a small town, Dniprorudne, which is in Zaporizhzhia Oblast. It's southeast of Ukraine, and it's a small town. And unfortunately, right now it's been under occupation of Russian army, and it's very close to Donbas area, which everyone in the world know, because in 2014 the part of Donbas, Donetsk and Luhansk regions were occupied by Russians, and it's very close to Crimea too. When Russia is also in 2014 they annexed Crimea. So my story is about, I was born there, I was raised there. My father has a business. He is a farmer. He has agriculture business. Part of my family is still there. Part of my family has to leave, and they had to leave everything there, and it's a struggle for us and for me, because all my childhood, all my years I spent there in my hometown, and now I cannot even go back there, and it's very terrible to understand that. And for the geography of Ukraine, yes, Ukraine is huge, as not as huge as Canada for sure, but it's different parts. And but for this escalation and further invasion, that started in the end of the February, all parts of Ukraine have been affected. And even in Western Ukraine, actually yesterday, a few days ago, there were airstrikes from Russian that hit Lviv Oblast, which is very close to Poland, very close to EU and NATO, and all of the parts of Ukraine have been affected. But the most affected, unfortunately, are these eastern parts where everyone knows about Mariupol, which now has been completely destroyed, and all of this south regions of Ukraine also been under occupation, and it's a terrible how people have to actually live through that in these territories.
Are your parents still in the place you grew up, or are they?
My parents had to leave,
okay.
but some members of my family are still there.
Yeah.
And I'm constantly keeping in touch with them and trying to understand what the situation.
Yeah.
And part of my friends also were there, and they had to leave the town, and the way to Ukrainian controlled territories was just terrible. It took more than like 20 hours to get to Ukrainian controlled territories, even though before to get there it was 1 hour, just a car ride. So it's a very terrible. People there don't have any rights, and it's just it's really hard to realize it.
Yeah, so let's delve a bit more into just the reality of that occupation, because we've seen a lot about the destruction on the front line itself, the areas that are being fought over. What about those areas that are fully under Russian occupation? We've seen some reports in the media about horrific sexual violence, about other atrocities being committed against civilians. What's the ongoing reality of day-to-day life for people that are living in Russian-controlled and occupied areas?
So many people lost their jobs, and actually many people don't have. So some people still receive money from for their work, but they do not actually have the job. They receive only partial amount of their salaries, and the prices for the goods are just enormous, and all of the goods are coming from Russia. So Ukraine is actually cannot have any access to those territories, and also people are being under constant threats, and some people who express views for supporting Ukraine and think that it's not how it should be. They get threatened, they get captured, and I have cases with my friends whose relatives were actually beaten by the troops, and it's the people don't have right there because they have these troops that have guns and they can do whatever they want, and it's terrible. And some people can't even leave these areas. For example, some people have like old relatives that they have to take care of, and they cannot go to Ukrainian controlled areas. And it's also some territories that have problems with water, with produce, and my father is actually a farmer, and there have been cases when the equipment of farmers were stolen and deported, like sent to Russian territories, and also especially business suffered a lot. So it's a very complicated picture, and in media it's not been talked that much because these territories, they're not as destroyed, but what people have to go through is unimaginable. And they're actually, the Frontline is very close to my hometown, and their people's houses homes were destroyed, and everything. Some people's businesses were destroyed, and it's just a terrible picture, to be honest.
Thank you for sharing that. It must be just very hard to see all that happening. In the period prior to the invasion, kind of this year, but following the invasion of 2014 with Crimea and some of the other regions being occupied very close to your hometown, was it sort of a similar dynamic? I mean, did you have a sense of what the occupation was like in Crimea, in Luhansk and Donetsk during this period?
I would say no,
Okay.
because it was still Ukraine. It was controlled. We had everything.
Yeah. But I just wondered in the parts that were Russian occupied.
Oh yeah, it's you mean the same dynamic as
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually I have some friends. I maybe not be very the one who can comment on this, but I know my friends also had, because from who were in Lugansk, lived in Luhansk, and when the war started, they had to leave, and they also lost everything in their apartments, their life, and they also had this type of occupation where they were under threat all the time.
Yeah.
But over 8 years, the life also stabilized there, but for now, the fighting is still going on. Those occupied territories live through all this because sometimes they get bombed, sometimes they're because the presence of the army is much more. Because before the invasion, Russian army wasn't like they told they were not there, but now there's much more army, much more people with guns, and people just don't have any rights.
Yeah.
And also wanted to mention that today is 18th of May, and it's the day of remembrance of Crimean Tatars genocide.
Yeah.
Also important. It's First Nation, like in Canada, First Nation people of Crimea, who were almost 80 years ago deported to under Soviet Union, deported to Far East Russian territories, and today is a Remembrance Day.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. And at times we've had Crimean Tatar leaders here in Canada, and certainly they've always emphasized their strong sense of solidarity with Ukrainian nationalism. And of course, they have a different history, different language, and predominantly Muslim as opposed to Christian. But yeah, definitely a strong shared desire not to be under Russian occupation and to be. I wanted to ask about growing up in Eastern Ukraine, about the issues of language and the way that, from my understanding, there are a lot of Ukrainians who, as a result of the history of occupation, they speak Russian. At the same time, there's a lot of Russian speakers who are still proudly Ukrainian and opposed to Russian aggression. And when I was in Ukraine, I spoke to some young people who had grown up speaking Russian, but tried to now speak only in Ukrainian. So kind of what is the presence of the Russian language in that region, and how is that? Because also this issue's been kind of weaponized by the Kremlin in their rhetoric, right? Trying to claim that anyone who speaks Russian must be on our side, which is certainly not the case. So yeah, how did the dynamic around language play out in your region, in your upbringing?
So I'll have to be honest, my first language is actually Russian, so I speak with my parents. My father is non-Ukrainian, he's from Lithuania, and he has been living in Ukraine for 30 years, but we still speak Russian. But for this region, the Russian language is, I wouldn't say it's important, because many people are used to talk in Russian, but I would say that since 2014 and now, people are actually understanding that language is important, and it's not that people get discriminated, nothing like I've been living in Ukraine and speaking both Russian and Ukrainian, and have never felt any discrimination for speaking Russian, and but many people are starting to realize that Ukrainian is a very beautiful, wonderful language, and now people are actually more interested to speak Ukrainian. And in these territories, people they have the right to really speak Russian. There has never been any discrimination or anything. And for myself, I actually spoke Russian till I was 18, and then I started to go to, I moved to Kiev, and all of my friends were from Western Ukraine, and I also studied in Ukrainian university, so now I mostly speak Ukrainian, and it's kind of for me, transition happened when I was not really that long ago, but I think unfortunately language for the Russians has been a premises to accuse Ukrainians or you speak Russian, then we're gonna free you, as they say right now. But language for Ukrainians have never been, in Russian language has never been an issue, and all people were allowed to speak whatever language they have. And also we have schools in Russian, both in Russian and Ukrainian, and also some schools actually having even Ukrainians as our language. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think that's a really important point that on the one hand, the Ukrainian national movement emphasizes the importance of the Ukrainian language and promoting and supporting it. But on the other hand, there are many people who they grew up speaking Russian, speak Russian with their parents, and still very much buy into the Ukrainian national movement, are proud Ukrainians, and don't want the so-called liberation of the Kremlin. And it's interesting. It was interesting for me to kind of have conversations with people about these dynamics around nationalism when I was there, comparing it to Canada, because in Canada we don't really have a shared ethnic nationalism, right? We have purely a civic nationalism, right? Whereas I think in Ukraine there are kind of elements of both, as I understand it. So there is this emphasis on language and a shared cultural history that shapes the core of Ukrainian identity. But then there's also of great importance is that those civic values of freedom, of democracy, of human rights. And so a person might be not ethnic Ukrainian living in Ukraine and still very much buy into those civic values.
Yes, and actually my father, he's Lithuanian, but he has lived in Ukraine for 30 years, and he's more Ukrainian. He's been very supportive of Ukraine, and he's been always, even when the war started in 2014, he also very helped the army, and now tries to volunteer and help. So, but he wasn't born in Ukraine. He's not ethnically Ukrainian, but he still very, very loves Ukraine.
Yeah, and even in the midst of this attack, my sense of in 2014, probably that much more so now, it really solidifies that sense of the civic dimension of Ukrainian nationalism. People saying regardless of what language we grew up speaking, we want to be free. We want to be able to elect our leaders. We want to have a functioning democracy, and other people from around the world who don't have a cultural connection to Ukraine that are stepping forward and wanting to help or even volunteer in various ways. So it's been interesting to see that. I want to keep these conversations to sort of 15 to 25 minutes, and but let me ask you just kind of one more descriptive question, and just a reminder to folks that are just joining us, we're going to be doing these on a weekly basis. I'm very pleased to be joined today. It's just me and Liuba from my office with the Canada Ukraine Parliamentary Program, but we're going to be having additional guests on in subsequent weeks to give more of these kind of frontline dispatches. What is happening in Ukraine, and what is the key information we need to take in terms of offering that support. So Ukraine is a large country, not as large as Canada, but quite large by European standards certainly, and has different regions with different histories, right? So in my riding, we've got a large Ukrainian diaspora. A substantial portion of it is from Galicia, and so there's a certain history to that, because that part of Ukraine was kind of under the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and so that was a bit of a different experience from the parts of Ukraine that were under Russian occupation for hundreds of years, and then there were the parts of Ukraine that had that were under Polish control earlier. So there's and then the German control. So it's not just East and West, as I understand it, right? We kind of talk about Western and Eastern Ukraine, but there's sort of more intricacy to the regionality of it. So maybe just share a little bit with folks about kind of what are the main regions and the distinctions in terms of the history and the experience of the different regions.
So actually, Ukraine has 24 regions. It's just like oblasts. It's divided our country, like the province, not like the provinces here, but still it's we have a unitary state. But the thing is that the history is very complicated. So for the eastern part, for the Luhansk, Donetsk Oblast, Zaporizhzhia Oblast, where I'm from, they were under and also Kharkiv and all this, they were under Russian Empire, and then most of the time under the Soviet rule, and then when in 1939 the western part was actually added to the Soviet Union, to Ukrainian Soviet Republic. And the regions, I would say, very diverse in terms of, and that's a very hard part of Ukraine, because it's like different regions with Arabia was also under influence of different powers. So I would say Ukraine is kind of combined with these patches of different regions who come from different historical background, but still we are very united in terms of language, because many people in Western Ukraine, they originally spoke Ukrainian, but the thing is that people think that Eastern Ukraine has never spoken like Ukrainian, but actually in small villages you can find people speaking Ukrainian, and that's so it's like very, and also the influence of Russia that's been on with our border has had a very unfortunately bad influence of Ukraine.
Yeah, so I think we'll probably get more into this issue in subsequent discussions when we hear from different people that may be from different parts and able to relate on the ground experiences, because part of the goal of this discussion from the front line is to give people a sense of what's happening in different parts of the country right now. But I think it is important to emphasize, as you did, that kind of unifying message of saying that though in different ways, all parts of the country were affected. This was a large-scale invasion that has tried to and continues to try to target the entire country, and also to say, and this was what I had heard when I was there in 2016, coming out of the 2014 invasion, but I suspect it's that much more true now, that these horrific acts of foreign aggression really do strengthen the sense of shared experience and solidarity among Ukrainians coming together to defend their freedom and their democracy.
Yes, it's true. Yeah, we're people from Western and Eastern Ukraine are now united, and we have always been united, but now it's more unification, and we are now all fighting for our freedom and democracy, and that all Ukraine with Donetsk, Luhansk, Oblast, Kherson, Zaporizhzhia Oblast will be, and Crimea will be a part of Ukraine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Democratic Ukraine.
Absolutely. So we'll wrap up there, and reminder to folks, we're going to be doing this feature, News from Ukraine's Frontline, for about the next 6 weeks. Liuba is going to be working in my office through the Canada Ukraine Parliamentary Program and helping to facilitate these conversations. It's just the two of us talking today. I hope you enjoyed our conversation, hearing about Liuba's experience. But in subsequent weeks, tune in at about 1:30 Eastern Time here in Ottawa, 11:30 in Alberta. We're going to be bringing you other guests who are actually on the ground in Ukraine to share about what they are seeing and hearing directly. So if you've been thinking about praying for the people of Ukraine, but you're also looking for just more information about what's happening on the ground, please follow my page and be ready for those live videos every week for about the next 6 weeks, so that we can keep you up to date and share more information with you about what's happening and how you can help. So thanks for watching. Thank you, Liuba, and look forward to sharing more information with you about the conflict in the week.